Our very special guest is Art McFarland. He is a retired ABC news reporter, and we're just going to chat with him for a few minutes, probably 20 minutes or so, and get his perspective on what he's been doing since retirement. Art, welcome to Reaching Out.
Greg, I'm honored to be here, and let me say right away that it's a special honor for me because I've always had so much respect for you in your job representing the very important people who keep our school children safe. I think you've been an able, proactive leader for them. I've always gotten good feedback about you with your rank and file, and it's an honor for me to be here and share this time with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. You spent more than 30 years reporting for ABC Eyewitness News. Let's talk about the last 10 years when you were the education reporter. And that's how we know each other, because of school safety, and you were the education reporter.
Well, a couple of very fortunate things led to my being named as education reporter. First of all, I was at a station where management at that time really believed in the importance of the education beat. They established an education department. There was a producer and a very, very exemplary reporter, Celeste Ford, my colleague, who I took over the beat from. She was the first education reporter at WABC-TV. A wonderful, wonderful, talented, and knowledgeable producer. Lila Korn was there as well. So WABC came in with both feet with the education department. When Celeste decided to transition and seek other frontiers in her life, I asked for and was thankfully given the opportunity to be education reporter at Eyewitness News. And I would say those are the 10 most rewarding years that I spent out of the 31 that I worked at WABC as a reporter.
Now, when did you retire?
Retired at the end of May this year.
Okay. Now, so that means you've covered mayors from Ed Koch to Bill de Blasio in his first, I would say, 5 months of his term.
Exactly right. Yeah. And I'll tell you something, going back to Ed Koch, my first encounter as a reporter with Mayor Koch was as a reporter at WABC Radio. Not everyone knows the story that I was a street reporter for WABC Radio at the time. I arrived at the radio station just before the transition from the top 40 music format, which set the template for top 40 stations across the country. Dan Ingram and the like, those DJs. Sure. They transitioned from that music format into a talk radio format, and I was there for that. And I remember how different it was to suddenly change formats at a radio station with such a big calling, with such a big following. So it was an exciting time to be there, but it was there that I first started covering Mayor Koch. And I like to tell the story under the heading of mayoral accessibility. Mayor Koch, after his formal news conferences, would sometimes allow small groups of reporters into his inner office just to ask him more questions, just to clarify points that we might have wanted to clarify that we heard during the major news conference. Take off his jacket, sit in his chair, we sit on sofas and chairs, and ask him whatever we wanted to ask him. That kind of accessibility did not survive over the years, and I'm not saying necessarily that it should have, depending on who was mayor, but that's how far I go back in terms of covering the mayoralty in New York City, to a time when you could roll up your sleeves and sit down in Ed Koch's office and ask him questions.
Well, how was Mayor Dinkins? Let's go to the next mayor.
Mayor Dinkins was busy. He had a lot of issues to tackle. I had known Mayor Dinkins as Manhattan Borough President, of course. He was just a really honorable man who did his best to carry himself in a way that well represented all the people of New York City. the accessibility factor sort of diminished over the years, depending on whose style it is. And again, I'm not saying there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So there wasn't that kind of contact. But there was always this air of honorability. He wanted to be and was an honorable mayor, and he treated the media with respect. So I have that to look back on with Mayor Dinkins.
Mayor Giuliani.
Mayor Giuliani, you know, the memory I have of Mayor Giuliani, also very accessible. I don't remember being in his office to ask him questions, but the mayor would always take the time to stop after an event and answer questions from us, what journalists call a gaggle, which you probably know. He would always be willing, most of the time he would be willing, to do a gaggle with reporters, and he was very comfortable with that. He was very comfortable answering questions from a not prepared script and made himself available to us. It was fun covering Mayor Giuliani, fun for me because I'm a big sports fan, and so was the mayor, especially when it came to the Yankees. So you could always get into a conversation with the mayor about sports and especially about the Yankees. But I will say that he did make himself accessible. He was willing to answer the tough questions and you know, just face us head on when we did have questions for him.
Mayor Bloomberg.
Mayor Bloomberg, I liked Mayor Bloomberg's approach to me. You know, he had a big appreciation for the importance of education. And when I became education reporter and I would ask him questions, he was always very careful to let everybody know how important this education issue was. And I remember walking into, I knew I had something of a rapport with him. I'm walking into City Hall one day and he was on his way out or in, and he said to me, well, they'll let anybody in City Hall now, won't they? And I said, yeah, I guess so, Mr. Mayor. So I don't know what anybody else thought, but I always found him to be personable when it came into a one-on-one situation. And I really do believe that he cared most, maybe second to keeping the city safe, because after all, he took over after 9/11. What an incredible time that was in the city, and here he steps into the mayor's office. But I think maybe second to that was education, and he made that clear. There are a lot of critics who followed his policies on education and didn't think that all of those were the right policies. But I'm confident that he did care, and his chancellor, Joel Klein, I think they did care about it. The result is left to history. You know, there are people who see good things, there are people who see bad things. But he did care about educating the children of New York City.
And finally, Mayor de Blasio. It's only a short period of time, so.
It is a short period of time, and I think it's not fair to try to evaluate, not completely fair to try to evaluate Mayor de Blasio. I think Mayor de Blasio is a nice guy. I've known him for years, covered him when he was a public advocate, and he was always very personable, always willing to listen. He's a good listener. It seems to have gotten off to a rocky start between the mayor and the media, and I'm not sure why that is. I think it was maybe in the media's eyes a bit of a setback, or maybe the first setback with him was that snowstorm day. Remember over the winter?
Sure, I remember that.
When it was a pretty bad storm.
It was very bad.
Miserable outside.
And cold.
And very, very cold. And there were a lot of people, parents and teachers and otherwise, who felt that school should have been canceled that day.
Yeah.
The mayor and his school's chancellor, Carmen Farina, decided that they should hold school. One of the reasons they gave was that parents depend on, you know, working parents needed to go to work. Even though the weather was bad, these parents still had to go to work. And so they say that they were doing, in many ways, a good thing by keeping schools open for these parents. But it was a terrible day, and they faced a lot of criticism.
And 40% of the children showed up, so that means 60% stayed home.
Stayed home anyway.
Yeah.
So that got him off to a rocky start with the media. And what I'm observing now, and this is my opinion as a private citizen and an observer, there seems to still be some discomfort. There's an edge, I perceive, between the mayor and the media right now, and I'm not sure why that is. But I know that the members of the New York City Press Corps, with its various personalities, really does want to get it right. And they really do want to have the cooperation of city government, certainly the mayor's office, in getting the stories right. So somewhere I hope there'll be a meeting of the minds and blending of everyone's consciousness to make it a better relationship between Mayor de Blasio and the media.
Well, you're not there to facilitate that. However, your colleagues may be listening to this radio show, and the mayor's people may be listening to the radio show, so maybe they could get it together.
Everybody can come together. I mean, everybody wants the same thing. The reporters want to get it right. They want to serve their audiences and their readers, and the mayor wants to serve the people of the city of New York. So there's got to be a middle ground somewhere.
Anything that you would like to say before we have to go?
I just want everybody to get along. I really do. I think, we had these midterm elections just now, and all the talk is about how the Republicans took control of the Senate, about this landslide for Republican candidates. And my opinion now, not tying this to you or anybody else, I think it may be time to consider not being a Republican, not being a Democrat, not being an independent, but being a person who works for what works.
Yeah, sounds good.
For everybody.
For everybody.
Because the answers are all there. The politics get in the way. I'm not supposed to approve this because I'm this, or I'm not supposed to approve that because I'm something else. The answers are all there for what needs to be done. I can't think that everybody can't just drop these labels, get together, and get it done.
Well said. Our very special guest is Art McFarland. You've been listening to Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237. I want to thank you again for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.